Hayden Christensen's return to Star Wars as Anakin Skywalker in Ahsoka was influenced by none other than the creator of Star Wars himself, George Lucas. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching for more details. Anakin Skywalker's return in Ahsoka was inspired by George Lucas himself, and it was important that his return didn't overshadow the show's titular character. Dave Filoni and Hayden Christensen were both passionate about getting Anakin's return right, and they wanted to honor George Lucas' creative legacy. Anakin's return as Clone Wars-era Anakin was significant for Ahsoka's character development and allowed her to find peace and embrace her past. Hayden Christensen's triumphant return as Clone Wars-era Anakin Skywalker in Ahsoka was inspired by none other than George Lucas himself. Anakin Skywalker is the Skywalker saga's central character. Without him, Star Wars wouldn't exist. In his role as the main character, he changed many other characters' lives, his legacy and relationships permeating every corner of Star Wars storytelling. When Anakin was set to return for Ahsoka, it was imperative that his return not overshadow the show's titular character. Dave Filoni, Lucasfilm's newly appointed Chief Creative Officer, recently joined Entertainment Weekly's Dagobah Dispatch podcast to discuss the making of Ahsoka and the reasoning behind some of the show's narrative choices. Anakin's return, in particular, was discussed at length. Well, I had been looking forward to this, to working with Hayden, for a very long time. You know, we met several years ago at a celebration, and we had an instant connection, and not the least of which is because we both worked with George, and we both have such a great respect for George Lucas and what he's created. And so it was kind of amazing to have somebody who had this experience for me to talk to, and would know the things I was talking about related to Anakin, and how George saw him. And we just really understood each other and the language of it. And he was very interested in what we'd done in Clone Wars with the heroic Anakin, which he didn't really get a chance to be in the films, because it's really about Anakin's downfall. So he had done a lot of watching, and he's talked about that, and he just discussed this isn't really a story about Anakin, but it's important how Ahsoka sees Anakin, because this is her lived experience. Your story was already told in George's saga, that's done. But it is important for her because you're her mentor. Both Filoni and Christensen were intent on getting Anakin's return to Star Wars just right by honoring George Lucas' creative legacy. As the quote says, Anakin's own story had already been told in the Star Wars prequel trilogy and Star Wars, The Clone Wars. But Anakin was an important part of other characters' lives too, especially Ahsoka's. Hayden Christensen made his first return to Star Wars in Obi-Wan Kenobi. This choice made sense as Obi-Wan, much like Ahsoka, carried a tremendous amount of guilt about Anakin's tragic fate. While Christensen's role in Obi-Wan Kenobi was brief and consisted mostly of portraying Darth Vader, it served Obi-Wan's character progression perfectly. He needed to know that Anakin's fall wasn't entirely his fault so that he could finally move on, protect that which needed protecting, and embark on his journey to one day become a Force ghost. For Ahsoka, Anakin's return needed to be equally meaningful, which is exactly why he could only return as Clone Wars-era Anakin, as the Clone Wars was a formative event in Ahsoka's life. What Ahsoka struggled with the most was that, from a young age, she was brought up to be a soldier instead of a peacekeeper. While Anakin did his best to train her, the violence of the Clone Wars broke her belief in the Jedi Order and made her doubt her place in the galaxy. Before she could finally move on, she needed to know that her actions in the Clone Wars and her guilt over leaving Anakin didn't need to define her. By reconnecting with Clone Wars-era Anakin, seeing him as the hero he used to be, Ahsoka got the chance to see that she didn't need to be afraid of her past. she could embrace it instead and become wiser and stronger, as demonstrated by her Ahsoka the White transformation in Ahsoka's 6th episode.